Hello and welcome to yet another episode of the Doctoral Dialogues. In last episode, we talked to Sivam, co-founder and CTO of Zolnoi. We talked to him about his startup journey. He unpacked how to be a successful startup co-founder. In today's episode, we are trying to talk to him about his academic journey. We are going to talk to him about AI and ML, which is the technology behind his startup in detail, and also because AI nowadays is the buzzword, everyone is talking about it. So let's welcome Shivam to the podcast. Hi Shivam,
Hey, hi.
welcome back to the Doctoral Dialogues.
Thank you.
I think our audience will agree to this that we learned a lot from your experience that you shared in the last talk. You mentioned that the main technology behind your startup or your product is artificial intelligence, AI. Could you tell us more about this? Tell us from this perspective for the audience who might not know anything about this, how AI based softwares are different than normal softwares. What is AI basically?
I mean, again, so if we more simplify the most, there is one example that often people talk about compared to like software versus AI, where in a software you are programming very specific instructions for the computer or for the application to do a certain task. Versus in an AI based application, you're pretty much making the computer learn that instruction on its own to be able to execute that task. Right. So that is the simplest form of unpacking or differentiating between traditional software versus AI softwares in general. So you're not definitely giving it the specific instruction. So it is learning from where? From the data. So it is just looking at examples. So and the reason why it's called intelligence is also mostly to do with that, because it aligns more closely to us, our human intelligence, where we learn from examples, we see things, and we do a mistake, and next time we correct ourselves. So an AI/ML technology, in a very broad sense of speaking, tries to do the same thing. And that is why and why it's good is because then, instead of having to give it instruction for every single possible outcome, you're just giving it sufficient examples to be able to start generalizing key generally, okay, this is how it is. And that saves you a lot of programming work.
So you worked at the intersection of this technology with the manufacturing, right?
That's right. Yes,
So,
yes.
as I understand, uh, AIML is a tool which is being adopted in almost every field nowadays. For example, let it be creative field like writing, designing, and so on. Be it software fields, website development, coding. So, what I would like to understand from you is how is it different, or what state is it in the manufacturing sector?
Sure. And in fact, in the previous part, we covered a little bit on the whole Industry 4.0, right? Which is where the whole data enablement of the industry happened over the last 5 to 10 years, almost a decade now. The data enablement happened. So manufacturing is not very different from most other use cases. Most typical use cases one would think of can be also considered in the field of manufacturing across the broader supply chain. So when we say supply chain, right from where the raw material is picked up to where the final product is sold. So the more popular use cases are in the sales side of things, for example, where one is looking at AI based analysis of your data to tell which market is good for you, like what are some of the different product categories that is selling well for you, right? So those are some of the things where AI is inbuilt in a lot of the your ERP, enterprise resource planning software, right? So that is how you're able to make use of AI in a more easy realizable sense. A lot of AI application that we work on, it's called the shop floor AI application. So shop floor is nothing but where the real manufacturing happens, right? So on the shop floor itself, once again, the more popular application the audience would be able to quickly grasp is the quality aspect. So it could be as simple as taking pictures of your product, to, and then the AI quickly says there is a defect in the product, or the product is good. It may even give it a rating of 1 to 5, and then you decide to give level 5 rating to some customers, 3 rating to someone. And so these are the kind of things, visual inspection, which has been in the industry for a while, with traditional image recognition tools, has been gradually being replaced with AI ML based application. And in fact, if you look at 10 years back, the most powerful AI ML was in the visual image side of things. Today, it's all LLM text. But yeah, 10 years back, deep learning was the thing. Convolutional neural networks was the thing. And with that, it's very good and very capable of identifying unique patterns in your image. And that's how this field came in. The area that we serve our customers mostly is on the asset health side of things. So this is called as time series AI. So what is time series? Time series is nothing but any data that has a timestamp attached to it. Right. So we're talking about sensor data. So you're collecting sensor every minute, temperature every minute, pressure every minute, energy consumption every minute, every few seconds, in fact.
So our wider audience might know about these share market graphs.
Correct. Absolutely. Yeah.
Right.
Share market is a very good example of a time series data as well. So once you have this time series data, so what we do is, so our AI is called asset health monitoring. So where we are looking at machine health as a function to be able to predict when a machine is going to fail, so that you can fix a machine before it's broken, right? So the broader field is called predictive maintenance. So we are able to give them insights. The goal is zero downtime, zero unplanned downtime, right? So that is
Mhm.
that is what we try to achieve with our customers. So we do a lot of research on that. There is lots of activities happening in the industry broadly in this space as well, because predicting future is never easy.
True.
So there is lots of variations that happen, particularly in the manufacturing segment. For example, I'm using the same machine to build 10 different products, right? So how do I normalize my data to ensure that my prediction is robust enough to understand that this is a different product, not that my machine is deteriorating, right? So these are the kind of things one has to take into account. But just coming back to that, so and the most popular application is the shop floor. One of that is the whole predictive asset health. And then lastly, combining these, so quality, health, and the overall process, right? So one is able to then build correlation based analysis to give you energy insights and energy optimization. I'll give you one example and on that to help you understand. So in a factory, there is the utilities. Utilities could be, for example, pumps, which is giving you supplying water, or compressors, which is supplying compressed air for the process. And then there is a process machines. Utilities usually consume a lot of energy. Process machines do consume energy, but they are also important. So often what happens is my process would have stopped, but my utility will be supplying still. My pump will be supplying water. It will go all the make a full loop, go back again, do the same thing, but my process is not running. So these are the kind of things. So where we try to understand the correlation between these energy consumption patterns to be able to give energy recommendations. But yeah, this is another example of AI.
I believe in industry, there are a lot of legacy systems. In previous part, we touched upon this, some of the challenges that you might face in manufacturing sector. For example, customers accepting, uh, because of some inertia, accepting these new technologies is always difficult in this sector. But AI nowadays is being adopted everywhere, everywhere. So where do you see this going? What are what are the
Are you talking
trends?
specifically in the manufacturing segment, or broadly?
We would like to hear more about the manufacturing sector, but please try to also paint a broader picture.
Sure, sure. So yeah, maybe I can start with the manufacturing side, and then also touch a bit on the broader applications. But in the manufacturing segment, manufacturing has generally not been a pioneer in any new technology adoption, and there are valid reasons why. Because like you rightly said, there are legacy machines, right? So typically, new technology would demand replacement of machines more often than not, and that becomes challenging because you would have invested a lot of money to acquire these machineries as well, and you would like to run it to the end of its life before swapping to a newer, more advanced technology machine. Uh, these are crores of rupees, if not more. So you want to extract maximum value from these machines. So a lot of customers that we work with, I know, for example, there is a company that I worked with where they had a machine which was built in the 1960s. Right, so you can imagine what technology was there. I mean, it was purely mechanical. There was hardly any electronics. Forget about data. There was hardly any electronics in that.
I would like to just give my experience at this point. I am a certified vibration analyst myself. And I know from experience that almost 90% of industry's problems are solved with simpler tech or algorithms. But the remaining 10% or more complicated challenges, like the problem that you are trying to solve, uh, they need adoption of new technology like AI and ML, because AI ML can provide more viable solutions to all these problems. But I guess that inertia to adopt new things is still a
Yeah,
challenge.
it is. Yeah, no, it is definitely a challenge. Commercially, also, it's a question mark, right? I mean, by the moment as a plant manager, I'm going to say, okay, I want to buy a new, I don't know, 10 CR machine and replace this. Your management is going to ask you, okay, tell me what is ROI, tell me why you're doing this. There's so many questions you have to answer. So I totally understand and appreciate why it is not simple to do it. The second problem is also the variety of machines, right? Because it's not a single OEM. You can't tie yourself to all Siemens machines or all ABB machines, right? You probably want to have a mix of different machines for a variety of reasons, maybe because your product demands it, or maybe also because you want to ensure that you're not tied to a specific supplier. So there'll be many reasons why you do that. But eventually your factory is like a boiling pot of like every OEM in the world. One machine, one German, one Indian, one Chinese. So you have a mix of everything. So that again makes it very challenging to suddenly change anything. So that is one of the reasons why manufacturing has generally been a laggard in terms of new technology adoption. But it is gradually changing. So this whole data revolution is what is helping it adopt AI technology, oftentimes without having to replace the machine. Right. So how do I make a more efficient machine without having to replace that? And that's how this AI kicks in. So often we also tell. In motors, for example, a good use case is motors. So motors have a rating in terms of their efficiency. So this IE1, IE2, IE3, IE4. So these are standard ratings, and IE4 rating basically is the currently I think is the most efficient motors in terms of how much energy they consume to produce whatever power they do. So one way is, yeah, you replace your IE2 motor with your IE4 motor, you will get energy efficiency. But like I said earlier, it's a lot of capex in investment. The other approach is using AI ML based technologies to identify how to optimize the operation of your motor so that it is starting to consume less. Right, so you're saving energy by doing that. So that is another interesting adoption also where AI ML could help you adopt. So industries are understanding this, and industries are like starting to. They're still in an early stage, I would say, where data collecting data has been the main focus so far. But once the data is there, that is the first building block anyway for any AI technology. Then the AI technology would happen. But any other common tools like LLMs are being often used by some of these companies to analyze their data. A lot of people are doing for trend forecasting of their sales and stuff. So that is where they're going. Lastly, industry 5.0 is the next thing that's happening, where the technology is moving more human centric. So far it was digital on the machine. Now let's build machine around a human, around the operator, right? So that is what is the focus of the whole industry 5.0, the empathy for the end user. So I think a lot of AML technology will have to come into play there, because if you want your machine to understand a human, not the other way around, then the machine has to be AI enabled. It is, there is no other way, right? So I think that is where I see the AI ML being more third party driven today to more integrated into the machine in the future. So all machine will be AI ML by default. So yeah, so we probably would see that future in the next 10, 20 years.
So I guess that will generate a lot more jobs for engineers, operators, etc.
I mean, it'll be it's like any new technology disruption, right? So it will kill some jobs and it will create new jobs in a different environment.
You just have to adapt.
Upgrade your skill, right? I think everybody has to be AI. It's same as what computers did 20 years back. right? If you did not know how to use a computer, probably you are becoming redundant to the organization. Likewise, in the next 5 years, take the time to learn how to make use of the AI. As long as you do that, I think you will find a job. I personally, in fact, feel it's good. There's going to be an explosion of a lot more jobs that's going to come in.
Right.
See, because as humans, we are. I mean, I'm going a bit philosophical here, but as humans, we are driven to go beyond what we have today, right? And to be able to do. I mean, again, we did a Elon Musk code in the previous section. Let's do it again. But the whole space colonization, right? So that's where one is thinking. So to be
Right.
able to do that, you need to build so many things, right? There's so much that needs to be built, and who is going to build it? It's us. So you have to have more jobs to be able to do that. So yeah, so
Right.
once all these problems are sorted, all these legacy machines are sorted, you need more jobs to create more
You talked
machines
of
to do more
philosophy,
things. So
and
that's
I
how
have
I see it.
a question which is almost mythical, a myth about AI and ML.
Hmm.
So I had a student. He was getting bad results. So he came to me and asked me about this. I I told him to check his training data, and almost immediately and quite sincerely, he told me that, sir, I'm using a CNN, convolutional neural network, and it should take care of my bad data, right? So that kuch bhi kar lega wala approach for AI
Hmm.
MLs that goes around. Uh, Particularly in manufacturing, I guess there is a lot of bad data because of the vibrations that are all around, the grease,
Correct.
and because of that, you cannot put the sensors or place the sensors properly on the machines. There is temperature, there is overheating, there are a lot of problems in manufacturing. Uh, so what do you think about this data and architecture debate?
Lot to unpack here, and I think like most of my answers are turning out to be, I think it's yes and no. But let me try to give a few examples. I think that will help us understand this better. But to start with, what you said is absolutely true. The whole garbage in, garbage out philosophy. If you're not going to pass the right data, what do you expect the model to pick up, right? So what patterns do you expect? So a very popular, again, so a very good. I'm giving these names so people can also look up. But Andre Karpathy, father of one of the AI revolution in a way, where he made AI more accessible with all his courses and everything. His lectures are brilliant. They're very good to watch. So it's available on YouTube. People should, if they have time, they should have a look at it. But he also, I mean, in the beginning part of his journey, he was insistent on tuning the model, right? So that was the whole journey. Okay, data is here. I have a data bank now. Let me now tune the model until I get the right results, right? So this is what probably your student was also trying to do. Uh, but over his own journey, if you see in the later half of journey, he started to himself talk a lot about tuning the data. So the new approach that he's proposed is build a solid model with some good data, some decent data. Build a solid model. Now make this constant, right? Because you can't have too many variables in an equation, right? So make the model a constant. Now start improving your data and see how the results improve. So this is the approach he strongly recommends in the last 5 years. So that makes to make sense, right? So if you have good data, you will have good more results. But the prerequisite is still there. You can't create a dummy model also and then expect good data you will give you good results. So you have to have a
Right.
decent model first, and then you expect good results from a good data. But data itself is challenging, which is also true, especially like again you rightly said in the manufacturing use cases, there is always going to be noise, plenty of noise in the data. And so how do you handle that? So that is where, in fact, I can touch a bit on the proprietary nature of our AI. But what we also do is build AI models. So we have even modified the loss function. So we are not using your out of the box AI models, but even our models loss functions and its some of the intrinsic nature of its input data sources. So we use
Mhm.
transformations on the data, and we
Mhm.
also have a very a domain tuned loss function. So to cut the jargons, basically all it is trying to do is understand the data better, understand the
Mhm.
inherent noise present in the data better to be able to give
Mhm.
better predictions. So you have to
Okay.
do some work to clean up the data, right? You have to do some work. You can't expect AI to take care of that. But provided you do that, then look for good data.
What I can gather from our discussions is that there is still a lot of engineering thought that needs to go into AIML development, in particularly in manufacturing sector. So is that true?
Yeah, it's mostly true because even today, like when we build our models, we don't completely independently build it. We still take help of our customers, as in their engineers, their plant team. So they do give
Right.
us a lot of inputs and insights to be able to build the
Right.
model. So yeah, so
Right.
that is still there. Yeah.
So you talked of prognosis in previous episode also. So was it the same topic that you worked on in the PhD?
Correct. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I don't know how I ended up with that problem through my team. I mean, I was exploring in my starting year of my PhD of what I really wanted to do. Um, I mean, the backstory, to be honest, is uh, after I did my masters, I was very excited about this whole AI. I started to read about it. It sounded interesting. It was too new still. I mean, of course, because we studied together. So even in our college days, there was one subject on AI. It was, I think, I don't know if it was even called AI. I think it was called neural networks. So that was the module we had. Uh, but I mean, I pretty much just okay. I read it and then I forgot about it. If I'm being honest. But then I went back again, even in masters. Then I did a bit of fuzzy logic based systems, and AI was something I wanted to pursue further. I always felt that traditional sab kar diya. I want to do something smart, something.
Yeah, fuzzy logic was a big thing back in the
Yeah,
day.
yeah, that was fuzzy logic was the thing, right? Yeah, everybody was talking. This is the general AGI, so the general
Right.
AI, so that is how it happened. But yeah, even today LLM is being considered the AGI, but I don't think that is true. Uh, so yeah, and there is contradicting thoughts across the world right now. So
Right.
where we are on AGI, artificial general intelligence front. But anyway, coming back, so yeah, so I wanted to do something on AI, and then I thought because home automation, embedded systems, this was generally the field I was working on. So I thought, okay, home automation, I should do some AI. So that's where I started. So in fact, if I go back, the proposal, one has to give a proposal when you apply for admission. So my proposal was more on that AI and automation. I don't remember the details, but something along that is what I proposed. And interesting part was I even highlighted the human centric nature of AI there. So I wanted to talk about make AI. I had a very nice quote also, but I can't remember. But I would say a human, a user, particularly elderly or kids who use automation systems in the home, they should not have to be trained to use the machine. AI in that machine should be able to automatically help them understand. It should be intuitive, to put it simply. So this, at least anyway, this was a proposal I had created, but they liked the proposal. They took me in, and then they said, "नहीं ये नहीं करना है. So don't. This is not what you're going to work on." But then there were a few problem statements that my group had. Uh, so first year in PhDs, usually you're just upgrading your skills. You're trying to see what you want to do. We can even touch a bit on the process there later. But so after my later half of first year, there is a qualifying examination in my university. So where you have to finalize your thesis topic and like submit some research background on that. So that is where I mean I through my professor, through my senior, I was pretty much I would not say I was fully voluntarily taken in. It was to some extent okay. Baki log kya kar rahe hain? Okay, this is what is interesting, and that's how I started my journey. But of course, no regrets because I totally fell in love with what I was doing because it's very exciting and interesting, a real genuine problem. So hence my problem statement at that time was remaining useful life prediction of machines in factories. Although initially it was just machinery in general, then I focused more on manufacturing afterwards. The whole idea is collect sensor data, a number of different data points, depending on what kind of machine it is, and then make a prediction of when it will fail. So that is the remaining useful life part. So a popular data set for this at that time, I think it still is the NASA data set. It's called the CMAPS data set. It's publicly available. Anyone, if you want to explore, you can do that. If you go to
Right.
the NASA website, you will get it. So CMAPS data set, they have given the data for turbofan engine, where they've run it to failure. So run to failure data is what it is called. So they've given the run to failure data with a number of different simulation, different conditions. And then you can build your model, take a part of that data for training your model, and the remaining part to test your model. So this is how I started my journey of building AI based models, and wrote
And
a few
I worked
papers on
on
that
the
as well.
exactly opposite end of the spectrum. Uh, the diagnosis of machinery faults. So our audience might
uh,
know this, that when we go to a doctor, generally the doctor diagnoses us. So what he does is the diagnosis, but prognosis is something which is sort of futuristic, predicting what will happen in the future. So is that correct?
That's pretty much
Okay.
correct. Yeah. In fact, if I can just share a very specific thing we look for, it's any machine's life, right? I mean, you can don't no need to know manufacturing to understand this. Any machine that you use, even it could be a fridge in your home or your fan, right? They have a life, right? So they will last for a certain period. Afterwards, mostly they will outlast the period you will upgrade anyway.
Right.
Good machinery. So you don't really worry too much about it. But in the industries, machines are used for much longer periods. So one has to think of what is the life of this machine. So there is a term called PF curve, right? So
Mhm.
potential failure and functional failure. So the
So
machine, think of it like a exponential chart that is flat and then it drops down when it fails. So
right.
for traditional approaches, matlab, very simple is if I have a motor, if it
Mhm.
really becomes bad, it will start to sound differently. So as an operator, I would say इसका आवाज बदल गया है, ये motor खराब हो गया, and I will replace it.
Hmm.
So that is the traditional approach. फिर the next step is कि okay, temperature sensor लगा, it's becoming hot, too hot, which you also see in your
Mhm.
phones, for example. Your battery, when it gets old, it becomes hot. So that's how you tell
Right.
okay, it's failed. But this is called as functional failure, where pretty much it's already in a failed state. But in the same chart, how early can you detect a failure? So, but to detect a failure, you should have some pattern emerge, and that
Right.
pattern is the point of potential failure. Okay,
Right.
so ये potential failure से कितने देर पे you can make a accurate prediction of a failure, and that is what a good algorithm. So that's how we test our algorithms as well. So earlier you can make a prediction, better is your algorithm.
In fact, a very interesting topic. Uh, I always try to draw parallels between machines and human body.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
For example, there are a number of smart wearables nowadays which kind of predict that a heart attack is going to happen, and so I suppose the smart wearables technology is saving a lot of lives, and your tech is trying to save a lot of machine lives.
Correct.
So what I want to understand now is about this PhD program in Singapore, which helped you a lot. I believe that it has that character of promoting entrepreneurship. I know from my network quite a few people who are now building their own startups. So I believe PhDs have different flavors in different countries. In India, it is almost tilting towards academics mostly. Uh, so I want to understand this: that what motivated you to go to Singapore for your
Right,
PhD?
right. When you ask these questions, I self-reflect, and I think many things just happened, right? I mean, you don't necessarily plan everything. You have a general thought of this is roughly what you need to do, but beyond that, things just happen. At least that's what I'm thinking as I reflect on your questions. But Singapore, I was looking for a job, so for a PhD course that was there. So I was working in Siemens UK at the time, and I kind of felt like maybe the place where I was working is great. I mean, it's a great workplace, but I thought I wanted to do more. I wanted to upgrade myself personally also, but I also felt like there is more to life than what I was doing there. That's when I was exploring few things. I was looking for also some research assistant positions and stuff like that in the UK as well. And then I was attending events in UK, IEEE equivalent. There is IET. I was a member of IET, right? So I used to attend their talks. So that is where got connected to a few PhDs and a few things that was happening. Another reason why I wanted to pursue PhD was because my manager, not manager, the MD of my organization at Siemens was a PhD himself.
Mhm.
Um, which I felt was unusual because I always thought PhD and वो academics पे रहेंगे, they won't come to industries. But I saw him; he did a PhD which was sponsored by BMW, and he did some very interesting work on the automotive side. So that those were a few things that I saw, and I decided, okay, let me also do PhD because I was already thinking about AI. So I decided to go pursue my PhD. Singapore was just, I would say, one of the many things I picked. Interestingly, I had also applied for IISc Bangalore at that time. So for my PhD, along with NUS, NTU, and a few other organizations. The only reason why I didn't go through IISc was because they wanted me to be in person for the interview. I said I can't afford this as a very early stage career. I can't just travel for an interview from the UK to Bangalore. Can you not do it online? At least at that time they didn't have an online. I think I'm sure now they would have it, but at that
Right.
time they didn't have an online option. So I said, "Nee, mujhe nahi hoga. I'm not coming." So yeah, that's how I did.
Let me say this, that if that were to happen, you would have been a great academician.
Correct, correct.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's true because that's where I was also coming to. So once I went to Singapore, did my PhD, great campus, uh, excellent infrastructure. I would say the best, even better than the infrastructure I had in my university in the UK. Because they upgrade, they keep it to the latest. They invest a lot in the universities as well. But the point you rightly mentioned, the entrepreneurship angle, I think it's also new to Singapore. I won't say they have always been doing that, but the good thing is they once they decide to do it, they invest a lot, which is what is often lacking in Indian universities. I personally feel, but you need to invest with the risk that the money may not come back. Right, so that is always going to be there. But they invested a lot in the last 10 years. So they, in my university, for example, they launched a program called GRIP, a Graduate Research Innovation Program.
Mhm.
So the focus of the program was simply convert every PhD to a product. So that was a tagline, something along those. That was a tagline. So they want every PhD to be converted to a real commercial product. And in fact,
Mhm.
then if your PhD is not aligned to that, they would even question why you're doing this PhD. So that is the length they would go for to ensure that PhD doesn't end up just in published papers, which is still good, but it has to go beyond that. So that is one thing. Maybe that is the reason why you've seen more examples of entrepreneurs coming from Singapore. Singapore also built a very solid ecosystem in the last few years with a lot of
Mhm.
investors, office. So they gave a lot of grants and stuff to investors. Government pays industries to adopt new technology. So if as
Really?
an industry today, I decide to adopt a new technology, the government,
Mhm.
there is a company, there is a department called EDB, I think, Economic Development Board or something. They would
Mhm.
put a certain X percent of the cost of that technology. So maybe the government will pay 70% of the cost, you only pay 30% and get the new technology. But now
Okay.
to get this new technology, you need a company or a supplier to do it. So that
Mhm.
supplier was the startup usually, or a early stage company, right? So that is how the whole ecosystem was built around that, and I think that could be one reason why.
So it won't be completely honest on my part if I don't add this, that tier one colleges in India are trying to adopt the same model. The situation is changing, but if we consider average, the entire education scenario, I think the PhDs are still tilting more towards academics in India. But this flavor of doing PhD, the entrepreneurship aspect of it, uh, I guess it is very evident from your career that your PhD has helped you a lot in building your career or building your startup. But in general, what do you feel? Do doing a PhD, does it help?
Yeah, yeah. I think I remember seeing one of your older podcast sessions where I think you touched a bit on this, where this whole PhD itself gives you that ability to uh, refine and build, right? I think that is very important. The whole research methodology, to so to say, right? So that is very critical, even when you're building a product. And if you do not go through that process, I think which we covered in the earlier section as well, this whole having a hypothesis first, collecting the data, testing with some approaches and algorithms, comparing different algorithms, tuning those algorithms. So all of these are a standard approach in a PhD. Then you have the peer review when you publish work. So you get a lot of feedback. Your supervisor also reviews. So there's a number of So in essence, there is a process one learns by working on your PhD. If you do a good PhD, you learn a process of developing novel technology, and that process is important in a startup, particularly in a deep tech startup. By the way, a lot of things I've shared so far, I want to be clear also, they are more to a deep tech startup, because there are startups which are focused on simply creating new products, and there are good reasons why they should exist. But deep
Mhm.
tech is more challenging in many ways of launching and like building and scaling. So there are challenges. So so that capability is built through your PhD. I personally feel the whole approach of building a product. Then also, because it's deep tech startups, you need insights in a more deeper level. And once again, PhD. I think one of the important things I often tell people around me as well. Important thing I learned in PhD is not just the AI, but being patient, right? And that's very critical to get the results, right? You do so many experiments, and like so many experiments fail, and you are like questioning your life choices at some point. Kya kar raha hu? And then
I can totally relate to this.
yeah, exactly. So but then you build that patience, right? And sometimes your supervisor is also questioning, and your papers are getting rejected. So all of this is happening in your life, and you're questioning, and but then eventually you come to a point where you get success, you get some results, which are novel, state of the art often. It also gives you pride at some point. Nobody in the world has done this, which I have done today. Right? It would be very small thing often. It's not necessarily a very big thing, but it is valuable to the community, research community in general. So yeah, I think to be able to go to that depth is with patience is also something one needs to, because startup, it's a hustle culture as people would call it. You have to balance. You are jumping, you're going fast, but at the same time, don't uh, forget to also go deep, right? So that is also equally, and as a PhD, I think one gets the appetite to be able to do that. And then lastly, as a tag itself, it helps. I think I shared that in the previous session as well, where if you are a PhD, VCs respect the fact that you know something beyond the standard technology engineers, for example. So that is appreciated in the startup world.
Agreed. Appreciation is definitely there, but I look at it in a different way. I feel there is stigma around it still. The way people look at PhDs is
Uh-huh.
very different, I would say, in India, particularly in India. I often see this that you kind of miss a lot of job opportunities just because you are a
Yeah.
PhD. Uh, not everyone in the industry is so welcoming to PhDs, at least in India. Startups, however, are a good place
Hmm.
for PhD, is what I feel, because PhDs are disruptors, right? And uh, they try to step forward from the state of the art. They try to innovate. That's inherent to them. So startup culture kind of suits PhDs, and your career, I guess your career is an interesting intersection of these two, PhDs and startup. So you did your PhD from Singapore, your masters from UK, and your bachelor's from India. I would like to learn more
Hmm.
from you about the highlights of these different education systems.
Sure, sure. Yeah, I mean, it's been a very interesting journey. But also, I just want to give one more reference for the previous thread as well. I follow Nikhil Kamath and his podcast. So very recently, Jan LeCun, if for those who don't know, he's considered one of the godfathers of the whole deep learning technology. So he joined that conversation. So he touched upon this whole aspect of PhD and startup as well, and why every startup should have a PhD founder. He being a professor, obviously he was very particular on everybody should have a PhD. But I would
Mhm.
recommend the audience here to, if you have a chance to have a look, listen into that podcast as well, where they cover very nicely of why the PhD skills are very important for future startups, deep tech startups, right? So yeah, so just giving a reference here. But then coming back to what you asked, uh, there are subtle differences in the whole academic culture across the board. But I'll also be very open and honest here that my understanding of the Indian academics probably is a bit dated now. So because I studied like more than a decade ago. Don't even want to remember the exact year, but yeah, it's been a long time. So I'm certainly sure that the education scene is significantly different from then, because I do hear some good things from people around me, even my employees who are fairly younger. So I hear some good positive things from them. But having said that, so the biggest difference I saw when I went to the UK was this whole practical focused education, which we speak about a lot. The project focus, more practical education. Nobody's trying to be mug up and like trying to be purely theoretical, right? That was, in a way, we can even call it a culture shock, where even during the course, I'm not talking in our college days that we had a practical session, we had a on class session as well. So I'm not talking about the practical session here. I'm talking about the in class session. Even
Mhm.
those sessions when teachers are explaining to you certain concepts, the focus is
Mhm.
all about how this is practically applicable, right? So real world examples often, and there is a whole open conversation around it. So for example, one of my courses was on genetic algorithm at that time, which also reminds a very good AI field. It's not very popular these days. So yeah, I don't know when it will come back, because that I also personally feel was more closer to AGI than your current LLMs and data. But anyway, another
Yeah.
discussion probably for us.
Mm.
But
Yeah.
so when my teacher was teaching genetic algorithm, the ant theory and all of that, so she would explain to us how in real world. I mean, every equation she would write on the board, she will explain to us the meaning of real world meaning of those equations, of how those equations apply. So that was very good.
Mhm.
I felt I learned more with that. And many of our lecture classes will be with a laptop, where they will ask us to write a code or something to simulate whatever was discussed. Right? We would
Right.
live build stuff. So, for example, another course was on fuzzy logic. So, in
Mhm.
fuzzy logic, we had this thing called traffic signal control using fuzzy logic. So, there was a
Mhm.
theoretical aspect first. Then my professor said, okay, you have the PLC software. So install
Mhm.
PLC software in your laptop. We have given it in your academic stuff, whatever.
Mhm.
Now build a PLC logic which includes fuzzy logic. The ladder diagram, ladder programming includes fuzzy
Okay.
logic to control the traffic lights. So this is what they
Mhm.
asked us to do. Obviously, they were helping us, but the whole idea
Mhm.
was to build this and like feel for yourself how this comes into play in a real world situation. So and then MATLAB fuzzy. So these were a few things we used at that time. So every course was accompanied by something we would do. It was not just
Okay.
listening and writing down and remembering. So that was not the case. So
Mhm.
that definitely was good. And another aspect of this was also right from the start of my course, my supervisor guide would always ask me, okay, what is the dissertation that you're going to work on? So it was
Mhm.
not like, ठीक है, last 4 महीने में वो करेंगे. Right from the start of the course, you start thinking, कि what is it that you're going to build as a final delivery. So these are a few positive things. So more project-oriented learning. I think it is very typical. Everybody would say this, but this is true. Is what I can tell. Key difference. But like I said again earlier, while I talked to some of my what I've seen as a change that has happened in India is internships.
Mhm.
I see a lot of young engineers as early as in their second year of engineering. I would not even think in my college second year में मुझे internship करना चाहिए, right? So I would not think about it. But these guys are like doing internship, paid internship. They're making money as well. But
Right.
whatever, but they're definitely learning a lot practical real world industry use cases right at their early days of engineering, which is a great thing. uh, Maybe the only gap is probably a bit more investment in the academics. I think more advanced tech, I think that should happen, which would help the industry. Then lastly, then jumping to Singapore from there, from
Mhm.
UK, the one thing I personally felt I missed in UK was the research papers. Right, in India, I
Okay.
also miss that a lot. I mean, at least the places where I studied or my guide, for whatever reason, I was never exposed enough to writing papers.
Right.
Even maybe IEEE, even simple as conference papers, right? So that
Mhm.
was never a thing that I felt was important. I was not taught to do it.
Mhm.
And that happened a little bit in my masters, but not enough. But when I went to Singapore, partly because of course I was doing PhD, so that is going to be the focus. But I saw that even in the undergrad courses, because as PhD in the first year in Singapore, we have to take some courses where even undergrad
Mhm.
students would participate. So it could be anybody could join those courses. So even for undergrad students, the focus was always on research papers. So a lot
Mhm.
of your project work will be associated. For example, they will give us a set of five research papers and ask us to summarize those research findings to understand,
Mhm.
and in some cases also rebuild whatever they have explained there. So those are the things we would be asked to do, and it is very challenging because research paper reading it takes its own separate patience and like capability, right? So some of the research papers
True.
are too technical, too much to process. So that is something I learned a lot in Singapore. So writing, so all my work in my career in Singapore was always focused on publication. So publication was very important aspect of all my work. So either it be reading for references or it be for building based on that. So that is something I learned a lot. And then from an infrastructure point of view, I like I shared earlier as well. Singapore is brilliant. No, I'm not just again talking about just the lab facility, which is there of course, but they build a whole ecosystem. For example, accessibility to the libraries, giving
Mhm.
you a lot of reading spaces, so you don't have to find place to sit and read. There's so many beautiful nicely set up places for you to just sit peacefully and read. There is silent spaces, there is co-working spaces, so
Mhm.
that was there across the facility. And another important aspect, food. Good food is important
Right.
in the end. दिमाग चलेगा नहीं अच्छे खाने नहीं में, so that is very
Yeah.
important. So they have so many cafeteria spread across the campus that, and subsidized, heavily subsidized food outlets. So that is also very important. I personally feel so these things enable you to deliver good. So whatever you have, you are able to get the best out of you with that available in your university.
I have a small counter to make here about the whole publishing papers is concerned. So I talked to all my guests about this debate on generalization versus specialization. It's a very interesting debate, I feel, and I try to bring it up as much as I can because I feel students do get into this trap of specializing too early in their career. uh, you mentioned of genetic algorithms, so that same principle of exploration and exploitation, I guess, is the best approach, uh, because you should explore as much as you can in your bachelor's, is what I feel. You get
Yeah,
your
yeah,
masters
yeah.
and your
Correct, correct, correct.
PhDs
Yeah.
if you go for it at all, to exploit, to get to narrow down, or to specialize in a very niche area.
In fact, when you share this particularly, yeah, it does make sense. The reason why I probably shared this is because when I started my PhD, the other guys, because that's another important aspect, by the way, the international
Mhm.
community, right? Student community. So that's
True.
also very, you get to speak to a lot of different cultures, different people, different way of thinking. So that's helpful. But when I joined, and I obviously people are talking what you've done in the past, every person, other person from a different country saying, I published three papers, I published four papers. And I'm like, acha, paper publishing hota hai. So this is where I was. And I was
True.
like, so that is the reason why I felt maybe if I had published one or two papers, it might have helped me set my path. But no, I totally agree what you're saying as well.
We are towards the end of our discussion. And before we go to concluding remarks, I guess just a quick question about the admission process in Singapore and UK. Could you talk about it? Like, you don't have to be elaborate, but
Yeah, I mean, I don't have a very long answer anyway for that. The whole, I mean, just go to their website and follow through exactly all the steps that they tell you to do. It's pretty much straightforward. But in terms of finding where you want to apply, right? I think you're also coming from that step itself. So that. Um, yeah, I mean, it depends. I think the general answer would be it depends on what you want to do, which course or which area of interest you.
so when does this generally start in your academic career? Like, let's say a bachelor student wants to apply to a foreign university for his masters or for further education. When do they start thinking about this? Uh, I mean, how early should they start thinking about this? Is it too late to start in your final years?
I don't think so. I don't think so. You can, because in fact, in many people, I even recommend to take up some job,
Mhm.
because that is, like you rightly said, the whole exploitation of a certain area, right? When you which you want to do in your masters and probably in your PhD. To do
Mhm.
that, understanding the industry is useful. I won't say
Mhm.
necessary, but it is useful.
Mhm.
Because I have seen masters and PhDs, even PhDs who have never gone to the real world. They've been in the academics throughout, right from the bachelor's, and
Right.
there could be sometimes a gap in your understanding or expectation of the world versus the real world. So I have many people, because of my background, many
Hello.
people do reach out to me for some guidance on this whole completely being in the academics is also good, but it is useful if you take a break, go to the industry, take a job, learn. And it doesn't necessarily have to be a job in a very specific advanced technology field. Okay, even as simple
Mhm.
as, although in India these days we undermine IT jobs, it could be as simple
Right.
as just working in an IT sector for a few months or a year. That will
Right.
really help you understand what the world, where the world is and what it wants, right?
True.
And probably what technology you, what skills you should upgrade yourself on to be able to deliver that. So those are some insights you would get. So I highly recommend people to do that if it is feasible. But
Mhm.
don't worry if you have a path where you don't plan to do it, that's still okay. Now then, Hans, coming back, you're never late. You can always say, okay, now I feel like I want to upgrade myself and I want to do a master's. Uh, but once you decide that, I think there's a lot of research you also have to do. Don't pick up the first place or name you know, either because of your friend who joined there or you saw it on the TV or wherever, on social media or wherever, and you decide, chalo, ye research for yourself, because every person is different, your background, your path is different, so you need to know what you really should be doing. And don't worry too much about, this is my personal take, that the ranking of the university, right?
Okay.
A lot of people who get bogged down by that because they think इसका ranking अच्छा नहीं है तो नहीं करना चाहिए.
True.
uh,
True. True. I mean, I myself had a GRE score, not that good, but I decided to stay back because of that. I,
Right, right. Because oftentimes you have to compare, look at the ranking also, then where you are coming from, right? I mean, let's say if I say my college, undergrad college, if I were to give it a rank, it's going to be far
Mhm.
behind in the international ranking standards currently.
True.
So
True.
hence, any college I go, even if it's rank 100 or rank 200 or even later or beyond that, uh, one should look for who are the professors and understand their qualification, their background, what they have done. Number one, thoda
Mhm.
bahut you should understand that. Another very important thing you should know, this I did not do in my masters, but I did in my PhD, which is often the international colleges are very, universities are very good in their websites, right? That again is a pet peeve of mine. Indian colleges don't do it enough. They don't put enough details on their website. They should, and they should have a quality website. It could not be an experimental website,
Yeah.
which I strongly feel should change. But international colleges and universities, they have a lot of details on their website, and they will have research groups, they will have research problems that they're working on as well. They would put that up. But then you should look for problems that excite you, that interest you, plus the kind of group that is running it. So the professors, what is their background? There'll be industry background professors, there'll be academy background professors. For example, there would be a ex Harvard professor in a low tier college as well. That's possible. So they would definitely bring those Harvard quality skills in your this college that you're applying for, or the university that you're applying for. So I strongly feel that you shouldn't worry too much about the rank. Of course, don't go to the worst colleges. There should be a threshold, but don't also worry if it is not in the top 10 or top 50 also.
But does going to foreign universities give you that edge or provide you that perspective to look at things differently?
To some extent, yes, because but that is changing also. I feel
Mhm.
as years are going ahead, young people, the new generation, Gen Z people, right? I feel in our generation, an Indian millennial, their thoughts were very different from an American millennial of the 1980s, 90s, right? Versus the Gen Zs, I think globally are pretty much thinking the same thing. because
True.
of social media, it could be because of internet access, or many other things. So I think that is changing, but in the past, definitely going outside gave you a much more broader perspective. Like I said earlier, you get to work with international students, people from very different backgrounds. Many people I've seen change their career paths. I had a very good friend of mine, Bhushan, in the UK, Indian origin person. So he also did masters in an engineering field. I don't remember, but then he decided to pursue a more again environment sustainability, that angle. So he did some courses on that, and then he decided to even go to projects across India, Africa, helping people in their economical situation. So he did a completely different trajectory as well. So these things happen with that kind of perspective and exposure, and I think that is important. That is very useful also. Hence coming back to this whole picking the university and like see what is it that excites you more, and then apply for that, and then pursue that. In the end, you have to put the effort, right? Whichever, even if you go to a tier one, Harvard or whatever, you have to put the effort to be able to like get the best outcome out of it. But otherwise, I think the process, rest of the process, and that aspect on the financial aspect, I again, people have come taken my advice in the past also. What I have told them is generally don't worry too much about your
Okay.
financial situation. Of course, I'm
Okay.
setting some baseline here. Some people may be really struggling in their personal life, which then it could be a very challenging situation. But I've seen a lot of the broad middle class people uh, who hesitate to invest that amount in a university outside,
True.
thinking will they get the return, right? And I always tell, don't worry, take a loan. Indian attitude is very afraid of loan as a general thing, right?
Yes.
We are scared of loans,
Yes.
and that don't worry about it is what I would generally say. In a way, loan is good because it's going to motivate you to get a job. कि job
Right.
तो लेना ही पड़ेगा, right? So that is
Yeah.
that is also important. So you have to not worry too much about it. Just take a loan. Education loan is generally easily available as long as you have something to show, or a guarantor. So you will get it. So take a loan, go there, learn, and then build a career.
Towards the end now, I want you to ask about the extracurricular activities, especially if there are some students watching our show, so that they benefit from this. How much these extracurricular activities, being social, networking, and so on, how much does it matter? Does it matter?
Uh, I mean, as much as you do is always good. I mean, it's hard to say if you have to do it, like extracurriculum in general. But like again, my background, I was fortunate enough to be involved in a number of activities during my undergrad college as well. I think the main factor that it helped me in was a bit more confidence than others, a bit more comfort in speaking, expressing what I'm thinking, because that communication gap could mean big difference between even you getting through a interview of a university if they have one. Right, so those things can help sometimes. So confidence, communications, all of that. Now, other than that, if you have specific sports background, I think it does help. Particularly international universities appreciate again your sports skills, so they have some, like even in India they have some quotas for people with sports background as well, so that can help for sure. But then coming back, should I do extracurriculum activities? I would answer yes. You should. You can't just be relying only on academics. And I'm not telling this for getting a university admission, right? Generally speaking, one has to maximize the time in their college and like do all that they feasibly and practically can. I remember the conversation you had about this whole 70 hours Narayan Murthy talk in your last so yeah, so I also personally feel, not in terms of work, but generally what are you doing in your day, because the time gone is gone, right? So in a day of 24 hours that you have, and 4 years of your undergrad studies, so maximize every minute that you have. I think that is very important. So you can't just be studying, you do everything that you possibly can.
But I guess as a startup co-founder, you have to spend that those 70 hours.
More than that.
But it must be rewarding, right?
It is absolutely, it's very rewarding. I won't even like lie. I mean, I'm not even exaggerating here. In the end of the day, the fact to feel that a company, I mean, I'm going to be more personal here, but a company that is making 500 crores, 1000 crores of revenue makes use of something that you built, and it has just come from your mind, right? It's because software particularly, it's fully come from your mind, in several lines of your code, and they're using that to take a decision of what they need to do, and that is very satisfying on its own. But beyond that, how the impact you're making to the industry. For example, a number of conversations that I have had with some of my customers, non-customers also, those who we spoke with but we didn't get a contract with them, we know that we have completely changed their outlook towards AI or data or all of that, and that is very rewarding to be able to reach to that level. So yeah, I mean, whatever effort or work you put, it's a lot of grind. Sometimes you do question yourself, "कि क्यों इतना कर रहा हूँ?" But in the end, you also realize, yeah, this is impacting the society in a broader sense. So yeah, I mean, 70 hours is a myth because I sometimes would say, other than sleeping, what else are you doing, right? So you should be always thinking about it all the time. Uh,
Yeah.
so yeah, so that's what at least most founders do. They're always having some idea sparking in their mind about, I could do this, I could do that. So you're always constantly in that a flow.
Yep. I mean, I personally feel that that statement was taken out of context. He didn't ask anyone to do their job for 70 hours, right?
Exactly. Yeah, he's not asking you to sit
Yeah.
and code all the time, right? I know that.
Anyhow, so this was a wonderful talk. It's always a pleasure to talk to a PhD. Thanks for joining again, and that's the whole purpose of starting this podcast, to bring different career stories to our audience, to spread this message that everyone, you, me, everyone can do it. Everyone can become successful in their own careers, their own fields. That's why talking to different people from different parts of the world and different career fields. So uh, thanks again. Thank you for joining.
Right. And thanks a lot for this. And like you, when you invited me, I think I mentioned this to you. It's a great thing that you're doing here because every journey, like you rightly said, is also very different. And often there are podcasts available, there are motivational content available out there, but adding is always useful because this would reach to somebody at some point, and they may be partly in a similar path, and this could trigger an idea. And I don't think one should necessarily follow what we're saying here, but I'm just hoping that some new idea kicks in because of all this conversation that's happening. So brilliant
Yes.
work that you're doing. I'm looking forward to seeing more people come to your talk as
And thank you, audience, for staying till the end of this video. I hope this has helped you in whatever way possible. But to try and help you more, we want to hear from you. So, in the comment box, please try to share your own experiences, the challenges that you are facing. If you're trying to apply to a foreign university, if you're trying to go do a job in some foreign country, let us know. Let us know so that we can bring appropriate people to talk about the topics that interest you. So, thanks again, and stay tuned for more.